You are listening to X-Wing Radio.
That's right. I'm David, that's Wesley, and this is X-Wing Radio, your weekly broadcast from a galaxy far, far away.
I didn't realize we were starting.
That's why I
Hi.
did the countdown.
Oh, I wasn't paying attention. I was doing my own thing.
Oh, well, this just kind of is a bad start to the episode then. We at
No,
least
no,
know what
no,
we're
no, no, no.
talking
It's
about
great.
today.
It's great. Uh, Jabba the Hutt
Jabba the Hutt. So, Wesley, what do you know
did
about
not
Jabba the
make an
Hutt?
appearance. Who?
Hmm? Well, um, this is probably confusing to
Jabba the
anyone who,
Hutt. Jabba the Hutt did not make an appearance in season 1 of the Clone Wars.
which is actually what we're talking about today.
But
Now,
Zero the Hutt did.
yes, in the last
Boom,
episode.
baby. That was the
Now,
last episode.
follow-up question.
Yes, it was.
Follow-up question. Did you watch season one?
Did you? Ooh,
Yes.
boom. Switcheroony. Okay, cool. David, so this past week, I didn't watch all of season 1, but that was because I had already watched most of it, like, a month ago, and it was pretty fresh in my mind. So I only had to watch, like, maybe 5 or so episodes. But I have, the whole season, uh, in the front of my mind. So
So,
we're good.
there were actually a lot of episodes that I forgot were that early in the show.
Yeah, um, so real quick to mention this, you and I, David, have talked a lot about how, like, in the past at least, how for people who are new to getting into Wars and want to watch the Clone Wars, like, it is important to watch the Clone Wars because there's a lot of stuff that happens in it that is important. But how, like, the first couple seasons as a kid's show, I would we've kind of refined that remark a little bit. There are a lot of kiddie episodes in this season, but we also have let's see, what's this one here? Rookies. Not such a kiddie episode. Um
And
Trying to think if there's some other ones that are a little bit more less kid friendly in this season. That one specifically is definitely not as kid friendly as
or
the rest of the season is.
some of the undertones in the Ryloth arc are kind of doesn't necessarily, spell out a lot of stuff, but a lot of stuff with like the Twi'lek girl and stuff. It's like,
Yeah.
you kind of get some undertones of like the horrors of war and that, like, she's, you know,
Yeah. Um but it's there are more kiddie episodes in this. Grievous's lair, that's not that kiddie of one. I mean, the thing is obviously the name of the series is Star Wars The Clone Wars. We're dealing with war. And it
mm,
might be a fictional universe, but there are still aspects of war in this. I think I think in this there was a it might have been the Liberty on Ryloth episode 19, or not 19, 21 here. I think in that one there might have been a statement made by one of the troopers how basically, like, this is their job. Like, their job is to live and die for the Republic. Like, they were born to live and die for the Republic. Actually, no, now I'm thinking about it. I think it was the wait, which one? Oh, episode 18, Mystery of a Thousand Moons, the one where they're dying because of the toxin. Um, I think Rex makes the comment that they're literally they were born to die. It's kind of a sad reality. and obviously something that like um, uh, later on episodes of the Clone Wars dives into, and then later on when the Empire takes over, they dive into some of that with Bad Batch, with like what do the clones do when there's not a war to fight.
Mm. And yeah, that is kind of an interesting thing. So one thing that I thought about watching season one, which I mean, I knew this, but it kind of stood out. I don't know if it really stands out any. I don't know if there's anywhere else, and season two might also have this, but as it gets later on, it is in chronological order. But season one is not in chronological order.
Hmm.
I think what is it, episode uh 18, I think? No, not 18. Episode 16. So episode
Hmm.
16 takes place during the Battle of Christophsis,
Well, also,
which
season two.
is which takes place before the movie.
Well, also, season two, not season two. Yeah, season two deals with this. So the episode I mentioned earlier, rookies, uh,
Mm,
they follow those characters again in the first. I think it's the first episode of season two. Um, no, never mind. It's not first season. It's let's see, where is it at? Because later on they go back and they dive into more of those character stories. And I remember watching that episode. It's got to Oh, here it is. Season three, episode one, clone cadets. That class of cadets is the one that goes and gets stationed on that moon where we
mm.
see them meet their fate in episode 5 of season 1. So there are some aspects of it that are a little bit black, and there's no like when you watch it, they don't specifically say anything about when it is. They don't tell you there's a
And
time jump. They don't tell you that it's in
so,
the past. They just do it, and you kind
mm,
of have to assume because characters who are dead or alive, you just kind of have to assume.
so there are, if you look it up, you can find lists of the chronological order of Clone Wars. You know, puts all the episodes and the movie on an actual timeline. I don't necessarily think there's a right or wrong way to watch the Clone Wars, whether you try to find a way to watch it chronologically or you just watch the series. I don't think there's necessarily a right or wrong way, but it is interesting watching it just all the way through, you know, starting with season one, episode one, going in the order they were released. It is interesting, you know, seeing that and seeing you know, they get to certain points and they're just like, okay, well, we need to fill in this gap from this story that we didn't necessarily quite tie up everything. So we need to go back and you know tie all the ends up, you know, or maybe
Yeah.
go back before this story arc and explain why things are the way they are in it.
hmm One thing that I was thinking about beforehand, and one thing that's going to be nice about watching through this, as opposed to watching through specifically Bad Batch and the grievances that we had with that, the problems that we had with Bad Batch being that there were a lot of filler episodes. There are filler episodes still in the Clone Wars. It's still that type of show that has filler episodes, but because there's so many different stories to follow, and while yes, we're mostly following Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Ahsoka throughout this, we are following the clones. So
Mm,
you can tackle anyone in that realm with clones. There's so many different characters that they go over in this series, and they each have sometimes their own episode here and there. Um one character I want to get to in a second here. But the thing is like there's less filler episodes and more like one episode story arcs in this. I understand that's what a filler episode is.
mm,
but like there's like maybe
Okay,
3 or 4 episodes are all part of
so
an arc, and then they'll have like a standalone episode, but it doesn't feel as much like a filler episode it's because of what it's doing. Like there's no real end goal with this series. It's just showing us the Clone Wars.
I will say most of the quote unquote filler. Well, okay, so the reason I feel like most of the like I said, quote unquote filler episodes aren't as bad or noticeable as like in Bad Batches because there's not really an overarching story. I mean, there is, but not in the same way that Bad Batch had one.
Yeah, yeah,
Because the overarching story of the Clone Wars is just bridging the gap between episode 2 and 3.
yeah. Um,
The
so
overarching
David,
story is the Clone Wars. So seeing these little pieces, the
yeah.
self-contained stories, is not necessarily a bad thing.
It's not as big
But
of a waste of time. It's yeah.
one thing I do want to mention though is the probably in season one, probably the only really egregious one standalone episode is episode 8. Okay,
David, nope, don't get no 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 shush 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 shush. Because I'm supposed to
okay. You
ask
want to
you
go somewhere
something.
first? Okay,
No, I want to ask you something first. How
okay.
much do you love Jar Jar Binks? And
So
is
yeah,
he
that's
worse?
exactly where I
Is
was
he
going with
worse?
this.
Is he worse in this than he is in the movie? Because the only right answer is yes.
I would say he's at least as bad in this as he is in the Phantom Menace. He's definitely worse in, well, mostly because he's not in Attack of the Clones or Revenge of the Sith that much, but he's definitely worse
Well,
than in those two movies.
what is it? Episode 17, Blue Shadow Virus. He's so annoying in that one.
Hmm.
He's awful in the episode that they literally made an episode for Jar Jar. Somebody
That's the
greenlit
episode I'm
that.
talking about. That's the episode
Yeah,
I'm
that's the
talking about.
Bomb Bad Jedi. Episode
Yep.
8, Bomb Bad Jedi. Yes. But I'm saying that one, they literally made an episode about him. So it's kind of one of those things that's like tough to watch, but you gotta do it anyways.
Mm.
That's actually that episode specifically is the main reason why I did not watch through the rest of the season after having watched it like just not too long ago. I was like, I'm not watching that episode again. Um,
I'll be honest. Okay, I'll be honest. That episode, I had seen it. I was several months ago. Actually, yeah, I think it was like several months ago. I think Luke was watching through the or Clone Wars, and I was just watching it with him. I don't even remember when or where this was, but that episode was one he had watched, and because I'd seen it like a couple months ago, I watched like the first 10 minutes of the episode, and I just like, okay, I'm just gonna skip the rest of this. I just can't.
but I
That's the
think
only
I think
episode that I couldn't finish.
they made him a little bit better in that episode than the brief bits of the episode that he was in the arc with the Blue Shadow Virus on Naboo there. So, because I think he was, in my opinion, he was really, really annoying and stupid and clumsy in the episode, uh, in that story arc there. What was it? After all that, Obi-Wan goes up to him and he's like, "Yeah, we're gonna get you some blaster training or some battle training or whatever." And Rex is there and he says, "I am not training him." Like everyone is annoyed with Jar Jar. Like
Mm,
honestly, if you look into the fate of Jar Jar and what ends up happening to him, I'm not sure if it's canon or not. I don't really care, but at least what Legends has for it is a little sad because he's at least a person, not a person. He's at least a living thing. But then you actually see the character and you're just so annoyed with him and you're like, just go away.
yeah, I feel like whoever wrote that uh ending for the character was pretty much, well, pretty much just had the same opinion that the rest of the Star Wars fan base kind of unanimously has about Jar Jar. And
But the thing is,
so,
here's my here's my thought on it. For what they did in the Clone Wars, and obviously I don't know what they were thinking because I don't think he's this bad. Obviously, they don't use the character as much later in later seasons, but I don't think he was this annoying. I think they just like they overdid his annoyingness in the Clone Wars. Like I get he wasn't the best character on screen in the Phantom Menace, but he wasn't this bad.
mhm.
Like he is, it is bad.
So
I can watch the Phantom Menace.
yeah, also, so I know we said it's Clone Wars started out as a kid show, and to a degree that's true. Like meaning, while a lot of the darker tones were still there, it
It's
was a
more of a
lot
kid, as
more.
in like a
There were a
preteen.
lot. There were a lot more simple storylines in this season
Yeah.
than in later seasons, and that's
Yeah.
really what I'm thinking of. However, the episodes that focus on Jar Jar or the droids most of the time are definitely more kiddie, you know.
Yeah. What is it? There's a story arc. It's probably in season 4 or 5 that we'll get to later. With the droids, with that little tiny guy, and they go on some mission or whatever, and they
Mm,
end up at the end of the end of the arc. They they meet up with Gregor, and it's like, oh,
mm,
Gregor, such a cool character, but you have to get through all of this to get to him. It
mm.
kind of sucks
Now,
because those episodes
now,
are
okay.
kind of boring.
Now, I think we've made it kind of clear that that might. Oh, okay. I won't speak for you, but for me, episode 8 was was my least favorite episode in this season.
Yes, I can agree to that.
Mm. Just because it's just Jar Jar. Well, okay, I
It
won't
is
say
just
just
Jar Jar,
Jar Jar. It's mostly
but it
Jar Jar,
is.
a little bit C-3PO. 'Cause C-3PO is kind of annoying in this show too.
Yeah, that's true. He's
But
less
but
annoying than Jar Jar, but he's very annoying with Jar Jar.
yes, and because this episode focused on those two characters specifically, it just made it so much worse.
Yeah, yeah.
But one thing I do want to ask you about is because I
Hmm.
do have several. I have four I just think of. Do you have any? Well, five, I guess. Do you have any episodes or episode arcs that stand out to you after watching this?
Okay, so the episode that always stands out to me because I always remember, like, if there's not, I can always find this episode. There's no like question in my mind where this episode is. Rookies is one of my favorite
Mm,
episodes of all time because, well, I like part of the reason why I like the Clone Wars is because it's about the clones and I like how they characterize the clones and I
and
like seeing that dynamic. So like,
Rookies was really the first episode that did that,
yeah,
where the clones were the main focal point.
yeah. So I really like that episode. It also adds a little more stake to it. Like I understand there's obviously stakes later on, but it adds a little more stake because there's no Jedi to bail them out, you know.
Mm,
And also I really like the character of Rex. I mean, thank you, Clone Wars, for introducing Rex. He's an amazing character. Actually, for my birthday, I got a Lego clone helmet of Captain Rex, so I'm really excited to be able to build that. And maybe one day, once I actually get a setup, I'll have it in the background. Um,
mm,
but I really like Captain Rex, and he's in this episode, a big part of this episode. I really like the clones, in general, and getting to meet more of them. So that one is probably the one that stands out the most in my mind as a whole. But if you're talking about favorite episodes, I really like the episode I'm thinking it's just episode 3 here. Shadow of Malevolence, the episode with Plo Koon. I really like his interaction. One with his character. Any
So
episodes with him in it, I really like him. And then
so
his interaction with the clones as well.
it's actually the second episode, I think, is what you're thinking of, because second episode
Well, I got it
is
pulled
one that
up.
stands out to me. Okay,
Well, I got
well,
it pulled up
so
here, but I don't know if he's which. This one has his picture in it, but it might be the other episode that I'm thinking of. So,
okay, episode two is the one where the Malevolence destroys the fleet,
okay,
and Plo Koon and a few clones are stranded in one of the pods,
yeah,
and Anakin and Ahsoka have to rescue him. And there's the whole thing of clones are like, well, why wouldn't anyone come for us? We're just clones. We're disposable. And Plo Koon
yeah,
says, not to me. That was that
yeah,
that one scene is one thing is one that like I always think of when I think of Clone Wars, and it's literally the second
yeah.
episode of the series.
Yeah, I didn't realize it was that early on. But those
Hmm.
that arc, I do like that arc. But specifically with Plo Koon, I like
Yeah.
Koon as a character and
Yes.
like getting
Yes.
to see him.
Um. So already, like the first five episodes, is two that really stand out. There's that one, and then there's Rookies. Rookies
Yeah. See, the
might.
thing is good.
I was about to say, Rookies actually might be my favorite episode in the season, just because it is self-contained and it is a little on the darker side, but it also focuses so heavily on the clones, and these characters are, characters that you really grow to love throughout the series.
Yeah. Um, Another episode that's a standalone episode that's an interesting one and not a bad one, but simple, very simple to what you were saying, is episode 1, Ambush, where
Hmm.
uh Yoda is with 3 clones
Hmm.
and they're
And
essentially fighting off a platoon or more than a platoon. You know, they're fighting off to make
yeah,
some things or whatever. But it's a
so
very
that
simple episode.
so that is actually one of my favorite for Yoda specifically, because they did a really
Mhm.
good job with Yoda in that episode.
Yeah, yeah, they did. Um,
Um,
but it's a very simple episode. It's the same length as all the other episodes, but for some reason, I think because of the simplicity of the episode, it seems a lot shorter. Um,
mhm,
I don't know if you felt that way, but I always feel like the episode is like very short. Um, but you know, it's a very simple episode, but you see that side of Yoda. Also in similar sense to Plo Koon, you get to see his care for the clones. You know,
mhm,
like later on, I think it's simultaneously my favorite and least favorite story arcs for two reasons. One, it's a great story arc, and two, I hate the villain of the story arc. But with Jedi Master Krell, when he takes over the 501st, he has high casualty numbers because he doesn't care for the clones. Even before he
mhm,
does any dealings with the separatists, he doesn't care for the clones. He doesn't see them as uh on the same level as him. So he carelessly throws their lives around. But most of the Jedi, and we get to see that throughout the series, care for their clones, care for their, you know, for anyone in under their command. And I mean, that's obviously why, like, you know, there's a big point to why they did that because they wanted there to be a bond between the Jedi and the clones to make Order 66 that much more heartbreaking. Now,
mhm.
obviously, like we've mentioned before in the past, Dave Filoni created a problem he had to fix, you know, but now we have the inhibitor chips. It's okay. So, you know,
So we've already talked about, I guess, the first. Well, we really haven't gone into the whole Malevolence arc, which I don't really know that there's that much to go into. Um,
not really. Um,
Basically, just the Separatists have a new super weapon, and um they end up destroying it. So there's not really that much.
another
But
another standalone episode that sticks out, and I don't know if it sticks out for you. I didn't realize it was in season 1, but was Grievous's lair.
Yes, that
or
was a really
lair
good
of
one.
Grievous. Another
That
one
is a
that's
really good
kind
one.
of dark too.
Mm. So that one, I like, I really like Kit Fisto, so I'm glad, like, we get to see certain episodes with the focus on certain Jedi.
Yeah.
And now, one problem with the Clone Wars that I've heard people mention in the past, is the fact that a lot of the main characters are in Revenge of the Sith, so there's not as many stakes. But you see that in this episode with what's his name? Uh Tiffus Apprentice.
Flounder. I don't know. He's a fish.
Okay. But because they introduce the character and hype him up a little, and just for Grievous to kill him.
And then just impale him
Yeah. And
through and through.
I kind of like that aspect of it because
It's
they
also
had
interesting to it's also interesting to see, obviously we see this a good bit, but like Grievous up until this point is a little bit more of he is more of the one that's the terror, you know? I
mm,
mean, obviously like we talked about with the 2D, they went away from that a little bit in the Clone Wars here, but in the 2D animated Clone Wars, he's a little bit more of that horror. He's frightening his opponent. In this, we get to see it kind of flipped, like he's on the run for most of this episode, trying to get his bearings because he walks into a trap essentially.
mm, yeah. Um Now, technically, I know it is more of a standalone episode, but it also kind of does connect to the one before it, where Luminara and Ahsoka are,
Hmm.
interrogating,
Which I did like that one too. That one was
yeah,
not one that I remembered. That was Gunray, right?
New Gunner, yeah. Now, okay,
Yeah.
that episode, the story is good, it kind of blends into the rest of the episodes, but
Hmm.
one thing that does stand out a little more is this is the first glimpse we get to see of the Ahsoka that we actually start to really like,
Hmm.
because
Yeah.
people have pointed this out before. Ahsoka in these early episodes, a lot of times, is very annoying, especially in the movie.
I was
Is
say
very annoying.
the movie's probably the biggest thing that people would
Yeah.
point to. Like people would probably say she's really annoying in the early seasons of the Clone Wars, but what they probably mean is that she's annoying in the movie. Because I mean, there are times that I can see why you would say she's annoying, but she's
Mm,
not as annoying in this as
no,
she is in
no.
the movie.
And so they did
I
a
mean,
good job throughout the series.
she's going full on Jar Jar in the
Mm,
movie, like it's
yeah.
crazy.
But they did a good job of bridging that
Misa,
gap
your
in this first
Padawan.
season, which we'll get to one of the later episodes that I think solidifies this as Ahsoka's kind of transformation from the character we saw in the movie to the character we see in the later Clone Wars, which we all love. But this episode, episode 9, Cloak of Darkness, we get to see that Ahsoka, like I said, the I guess the character we actually like.
The Ahsoka we all know and love. David,
Now,
I had a couple episodes picked out that I was gonna mention if you're asking like what my favorites were. At this point, we're kind of just going through the whole entire like
mm,
all the episodes. There's a couple here that I wasn't as fond of, but I mean most of these here like are pretty
mm,
season ones besides Bombad Jedi. They hit this out of the park, like,
yeah.
because I mean,
Now,
you move over after Grievous's lair, and you hop over to this arc where these pirates Hondo captures you know Gre-
mm,
Dooku here, and then you have the trio of you get to see Dooku, Obi-Wan, and Anakin actually kind of working together for a little point. Like
Yes.
that's fun,
So
and the
tho-
interaction's funny.
those
Like,
two episodes are actually two that when I asked you like if you had any standard episodes, these are two that I was thinking of
mhm,
because like yes, the episode what is it? 12
11,
where
11 and
Dooku
12.
and Obi-Wan
Like,
and
yeah,
Anakin have to work together to escape Hondo is just
yeah.
amazing. But also the first introduction of a Hondo Onaka is just amazing. Like
I love his character. I love his character. He's so great.
okay, I heard someone say this, and it is such a fitting description. But someone say that Hondo is the Jack Sparrow of the Star Wars universe, and it is so fitting. Just because,
I honestly, I honestly like. I don't know. There's a lot of characters in the Clone Wars that I'm like, I kind of want my own show to see what they're all of. If you legitimately, I wouldn't mind seeing a Pirates of the Clone Wars or something. Pirates of the Universe.
oh,
Give me Hondo as Jack Sparrow. You know, this is the day
and
that you
that's
almost
one thing that
caught.
that's something everyone when they were making pumping out all the live action shows, everyone said they wanted Hondo, and we never got Hondo, and I'm just like that would have been okay.
David, who would you cast? Who would you cast as Hondo?
Ooh. He's saying comparing him to Jack Sparrow is kind of tainted in my opinion because all I can think right now is Johnny Depp, but I don't feel like that would work. Well,
Nah, see, I'm about to say right now. I think one, I think Johnny Depp's a little old. I mean, obviously, I know Hondo is a little bit older, anyways. But I feel like you need someone who's a little bit younger to play him.
mm,
Uh, but you
I
need
don't.
someone with that charisma.
Yeah.
You need someone like Johnny Depp who can pull off that like rock star style, but futuristic-y.
hmm
But he also has to be a little crazy in the brain, like he smoked too much crack or something.
Yeah, honestly can't. No one stands out right now to me for playing Hondo.
Yeah, that honestly, I mean, man, that I'd never thought about that, but that's really fun. But yeah, these episodes here, like the thing is too, is like Hondo becomes a character that honestly Anakin and Obi-Wan kind of rely on at times later on in the series, but he
hmm
double crosses him in this. But he still is. I think the biggest thing with it is he's a pirate. He does what's best for him. But
hmm
later on, I think he really comes around to actually liking the Jedi and in probably finding it beneficial to stay on their good side.
hmm Oh yeah, later on in the Clone Wars and in Rebels too, he's now he does a lot for his own gain too, but
Oh yeah,
he also ends up helping the the good guys, I'll call them, because it's the in the Clone Wars it's the Jedi or the Republic. In Rebels it's the Rebellion. He ends up helping the
yeah.
good guys a lot in these cases, but at the same time, most of the time he's doing it for his own gain. The dogs are freaking out right
I cannot hear a thing, but I apologize for what you have to listen to, because I understand.
now. Yeah, yeah.
Um, Now, David, the next story arc, me personally, not that big a fan of. Like the episodes 13 and 14, Jedi Crash and Defenders of Peace. I don't remember the name of the planet they land on, but they crash. Anakin gets hurt, and I don't know. I didn't really care for the episodes too much. They seemed a
Okay,
little
they're
harder for
not
me to watch.
they're not necessarily bad episodes. They're just kind of
Yeah,
forgettable.
yeah. That's the biggest thing, and
Honestly, with the next the next episode too, a little bit, like that's the one where um they go to the war and have the like, or they go to the planet and there's like the lemur people or whatever.
Yeah, I don't mind that one as much. The ambassador guy gets on my nerves a little bit, but that's kind of the point of the character.
Yeah,
I did kind of like that one a little bit. Now, David, real quick, I'm looking at it here. Got this thing here. You know how sometimes I don't know if we've ever talked about it on the podcast, but you know how like people talk about like what is it with you know in like fantasy stories or whatever where you got the female warrior and she comes out on the battlefield and she's wearing like nothing, like it's armor but it's like strip you're good, and like that's all that they wear and you're like what are you getting out of that, and like obviously it's for the male gaze. What was that, there was one thing. Have you seen that video where it's said people say this is the female gaze, and it's like, nope, that's not female gaze. Female gaze are called lesbians. Anyways, that aside, what is
I
Ayla
don't know if you.
Secura wearing here? Like she's at war.
Yeah. Well,
I
that's
mean,
also what she
Ahsoka.
was. There's also what she was wearing in Revenge of the Sith, which I guess might make a little more sense being on Felucia because it is a like jungle planet. It's probably hot, but I don't know necessarily even with that how practical it would be.
I mean, like, you know. Also, what do they do? This is a kids show. Why are they drawing her like that? Like, you ever watch those episodes, or not those like movies that are kids movies, and you walk in the room and you're like, animators, you got a problem. You got to type and I can see it. That's all I'm
Yeah,
saying.
that's
That's all
that's
I.
uh yeah,
I mean,
probably shouldn't dwell on that.
They kind of did the same thing with Ahsoka in the first couple episodes. I mean, not really. They didn't like do her like her, but you know, Ahsoka, it's like, what are you wearing? Like you're in battle. Like that's not practical. And then they actually give her some battle gear, an outfit for battle in the later seasons. You're like, yes, thank you. So stop going for the male gaze. They like men. Don't
See,
overthink it. Uh,
earlier when you said that, I don't know if it like it was actually funny or if you just caught me off guard. That's why I laughed. I had no idea where
I
you were
caught.
going with that.
Oh, I caught you off guard. That's definitely for sure.
Yeah.
Anyways, so David, that aside, that arc is a little bit lackluster. They do have this weapon that they're testing out that is supposedly supposed to wipe out all life, but keeps like droids and all that, doesn't harm them. Uh, but this, like the Malevolence, is technology that we see being developed that once it gets destroyed, we never see again.
Mm,
So it's kind of a unimportant episode too within that, or arc, I
yeah.
guess.
Yeah.
The next two episodes here, we had Trespass, which is an episode that you've already kind of gone over a little bit, and then we have Hidden Enemy, which I like that one again, dealing with a lot
That
of the
yeah,
clones.
that's the one that goes back to Christophsis. But I think wait, is it? Yeah, yeah, that is. But it does a really good job with that because like to your point, it goes back to and deals a lot with the clones and stuff. And it's interesting seeing a clone traitor.
Yeah, well, we kind of got to see a little bit of that in the episode with Ahsoka and Luminara, because one of the command or the Royal Guard troopers or whatever had
The Senate
betrayed.
guards, yeah.
But it is interesting to see that there are like
But he was
this
a
this show.
conscript. He wasn't or not a conscript. He was a he was a normal guy, not a clone.
Yeah, yeah,
In
not a
this,
clone. Yeah, yeah.
it's a clone,
It's an
so
actual clone.
it's
Well,
yeah, it's kind of interesting.
with this specifically, you're right. It being like interesting to see this because like these are clones. There is they all they're all the same, but they're all different, and it's interesting to
Mm,
see how they differentiate themselves. And obviously, one of them decided to betray their only family they knew, and you know their brothers and all that stuff. Like he decided it was better for him to go and betray the 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 Republic. You know, that was his own free will to do so, which is interesting that like that was the case.
mm,
So, you know, and like other clones are super loyal and other clones don't care. Like all the personalities that we get to see throughout the show is very interesting to see. And this one being a traitor is, obviously like how do they like
um,
when you clone someone, how do they get their own? Because essentially, I mean, if you think about it, it's just a bunch of neurons firing up there,
mm.
you know. So what makes it different if you're a clone
But
of someone?
to that point, yeah, okay, in Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith, the clones honestly don't seem that much different to the battle droids.
Hmm. Yeah,
You almost get the impression that they're kind of just, they're programs, they
yeah.
follow orders, which,
That's why I'm wondering how much programming they actually do when they go into the cloning process.
but in this episode, you get to see that, yeah, they might have a little bit, but they have free will still.
Yeah, there's a lot
So,
of what's the word? Philosophical debates that could be had in Star Wars.
mm, especially, well, clones and droids especially, because maybe not necessarily the battle droids, because you don't really see any of them, but like, you know, the clones, I feel like
Yep.
you could definitely argue are sentient, but then you also have certain cases where the droids, like, are certain droids sentient? Like, you know, C3PO argues with a lot of stuff that people tell him to do. So,
R2D2. I
yeah,
mean, case
yeah.
closed.
So
What's going on here?
there's a lot of things you could say, and with sentience, like, is that anyway? I'm getting off topic here.
Yeah, there's a lot of philosophical debates that we could have on that, but I don't think either one of us want to do that.
Mm,
Moving on to there's three more arcs in this season. Starting with the blue shadow virus here. Now we get back to Jar Jar, but we also get to see, and I think this is what you were talking about earlier. Ahsoka really does in this even more so solidify herself as the character that we start to know and love.
not that's actually not what I was referring to,
Oh,
but yes, it is. He's definitely better than beginning of the series, definitely better than the movie. Um,
oh, you
movie is
talking
so good,
about
but
the one here where she's
in episode 19,
taking
yeah,
on.
yeah.
Okay. Well, see, I get what you're saying with that, but my point with this one here is that like, you know, just the leadership that she shows when they're trapped in episode 18 here when they're trapped underneath when the toxin has been released and they're
Mm,
exposed to it, and the leadership that she shows in that episode I feel like is
mm.
is
So
starting to get her character more to that point.
I know it's not, but these two episodes, because it's like the you know mad scientist or whatever who releases the virus. It's
Yeah.
not, but I get almost like serial killer movie vibes with this. Like,
Hmm.
they're trying to. Yeah, and I know it's not exactly that, but I get those kind of vibes. Like they're trying to track down this well mad scientist or whatever, or
I can see what you're saying.
it's
I
just
get what you're
kind of
saying.
and then the second part is like them in the like, layer or whatever, kind of
Yeah.
you know it's just interesting. I do really like these episodes. Again, they're not like rewatching them. I was like, oh yeah, I remember these episodes. But when I
Yeah.
think back on the Clone Wars, these aren't necessarily episodes that stand out, but they are good episodes.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with that. Same for, in all honesty, same for the Ryloth arc, which is the episode 19 here is the one you were
But
talking about.
yeah, so well, I'll talk about that first, then I want to talk about episode 20. But
Mm,
episode 19. So what I was talking about with Ahsoka in this episode was, the fact that she, well, basically because of a judgment call she made, most of her squad ends up getting killed.
hmm
And going back to this whole thing of, how a lot of the Jedi, actually do view the clones as like, equal life forms, you know, that guilt is weighing on her. And it's just the way she deals with it, I feel like is what, you get a good characterization of Ahsoka through that.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with that. I think because you got three main episodes, and obviously we pointed out each one of them. Three main episodes in this season that really focus on Ahsoka and start to get her out of that annoying phase. I do think at the beginning we kind of glossed over it. It also isn't that important of an arc, but where R2D2 gets lost and Anakin gets a new R2 droid or
Hmm.
astromech. Um that episode though, that arc there, she's a little more annoying. Um but I think by the end of it, she starts coming around a little bit more. But
Hmm.
we kind of focused on three of those episodes that kind of start to get her out of that little annoying stage that we see her in, specifically in the Clone Wars movie. But
Hmm.
I agree, that is a good the way that she deals with the events that
Now, I
losing
know
her
you said,
troop is
yeah.
good.
Now, I know you said the Ryloth arc doesn't necessarily stand out. I would say the arc as a whole doesn't necessarily, but episode 20, Innocence of Ryloth, is one that I do like. That's one that I have thought about, thinking back on like the early episodes of Clone Wars,
hmm
because it is such a again, it's an episode that focuses very heavily on the clones. I know Obi-Wan is in it. Like I have Disney Plus pulled
They
up right now, and his face is right there in the thumbnail. But
yeah,
it doesn't
but they do
focus
focus
on
on
Obi-Wan.
who are the two? These two clones are mentioned later on, but what are the names of the clones that are in this episode? I know there are ones later on that are brought up in his not Legion,
Oh,
his
can't re- yes, Legion. Because they're
Legion.
they're 212, which most of the clones we get to
212.
see
Okay.
in the Clone Wars, like most of the named clones and stuff, are 501st.
Yeah.
Except for, of course, the clone commanders, because, like you got Wolf and Cody and all them. But which is kind of interesting because you don't actually see the commander of the 501st at all in the Clone Wars. Well, I guess
Well,
Rex
wasn't it
does get
what
promoted, but
I would say? Wasn't it a thing that even though Rex was captain, there wasn't like the commander position was taken by Ahsoka, technically?
I think that
I
was
think that's how
that's
it's explained.
yeah.
Because I don't think there's a clone commander. Like, Rex is in charge of the 501st under the Jedi. So I
Mm,
think that's why he is captain as opposed to commander. And Ahsoka is commander, which is why I think they ended up changing it later on in the series, right? Whenever he gets a promotion or whatever. I don't really remember that
Mm.
vividly, but I think that's what it is. 'Cause I think Ahsoka is technically the commander. So, anyways, sorry.
Yeah, I was trying to
Were
see if I
you
can
looking
find
up?
the Yeah, I was trying to see if I can find the names of those clones. Waxer and
I
Boyle.
was Waxer and yeah, I would say we do get to see them. I think later on in an episode where they're on Geonosis. I think is another episode that I remember them focusing on those characters. It might actually be when one of the two characters ends up dying. I'm not sure. That's another thing is talking about not having stakes in the Clone Wars. We get to see a lot of clones, and then we get to see a lot of them die. Like you
Mm.
get attached to these characters, and I mean, what about one of the biggest arcs that they have in Clone Wars near the end in season 5 with fives? I mean, that's
And
pretty heavy stuff. And
yeah.
then you also got Echo, which obviously we know what happens to Echo in the long run, but like he was dead.
Mm.
So, there's a lot there are a lot of stakes, even though the three main Jedi that we see in this, we know survive later on. Obviously, I guess we didn't know that Ahsoka survived later on at that it depends on whenever we're watching this would be. But obviously we know all the Jedi are going to survive. All the Jedi that are in Revenge of the Sith. But like the clones, we also have the
Mm.
have to figure out what the reasoning for Rex. Obviously, we know now, but like we didn't know Rex was gonna be around. So there's a lot of stakes that can be had in Clone Wars. Um, even watching it now.
Mm. Yeah.
You had a point, didn't you, with Ryloth? I think I cut you off from that, and then I didn't know if you ever
Well,
made your point on the innocence of Ryloth.
what I was just saying is it is an episode that does stand out to me more just because again it's an episode that focuses on clones and honestly two clones that we don't really get to see a lot of. I know they are
Hmm.
mentioned later on in the series, but we really get to see a lot of them.
Yeah,
Um,
there's not a whole lot from them.
and there's that, and then there's the whole I think it does a good job of showing one of these darker undertones because like I said there's the girl all that um you know but it also starts to show a little bit of the humanity of the clones.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. And the effects of war. Like I get what you're
Yeah.
saying with that. Like it does show a lot of those things there. Um Now, David, ending the season, there is a one episode story arc, episode 22, Hostage Crisis, which for what I'm thinking here is the introduction of probably one of my favorite characters in
Hmm.
all of Star Wars, Cad
So
Bane.
yes. So I was about to say this episode and that two-part episode with Dooku, episode
Hmm.
11 12, 11 12. These two story arcs stand out to me more so for the characters they introduce. And yes,
Yeah.
Cad Bane, mm,
David, can I
such a
can I
good
mention
character.
something? Can I mention something about Cad Bane? You never, let me think about this. Maybe once, but it is rare that you ever see Cad Bane lose.
Mm,
Now, the reason I'm questioning it right now, and I've watched it semi recently, but I can't remember quite how it ends. The arc where Obi-Wan goes undercover as a bounty hunter, Cad Bane might have gotten captured at the end of that. I don't quite remember. He might have gotten away. Obviously, it didn't go according to his plan. But like, okay, the only part of this episode, to stick on this episode, the only part of this episode that did not go according to Cad Bane's plan was him killing the senators. And obviously, you had Anakin and Padme in there, so obviously that couldn't happen. But he did everything else perfectly to the plan that he had designed out.
Mm.
Like, Cad Bane is not a good guy. He's a villain. He's a bounty hunter, but he leans more towards helping out the bad guys, and he's at odds with the good guys. But he doesn't. It is rare that he doesn't come out on top, and that's an interesting aspect of the show. That a
Yeah.
character like that doesn't lose that often.
All I'll say about that is there is a reason that Cad Bane is a rival with Boba Fett, arguably the most infamous bounty hunter in the entire galaxy. There's a reason Cad Bane is his rival.
Yep.
Like,
Now, I know Cad Bane was upset about the death of Jango Fett because he never got to one up him. Like,
mm,
when Cad Bane came onto the scene and started making a name for himself, Jango Fett was already Jango Fett. So he was kind of making his way up in the ranks. Now, when Jango Fett died, Cad Bane became top dog, but he never got a chance to prove that he was better than Jango Fett, which is why he had such a rival with Boba Fett. And per Boba Fett, or the Book of Boba Fett, he does lose in that fight to him. Um, whether he's dead or not, he lost. Um,
now, that's an interesting
but
question, though. If Jango Fett had survived, would Cad Bane have been able to surpass him and, you know,
that's kind of what I was getting at. Also, I was wondering if you know of any instance where Cad Bane had a chance to surpass him or go against him and just lost.
not that I can think of. Because, Clone Wars has the whole thing of, Cad Bane and Boba Fett's rivalry. And a lot of it
Mm-hmm.
goes back to the fact that, Cad Bane kind of has these unresolved issues with Django strictly because he never got the chance to face off against Django.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fair. I was just saying, wondering because obviously I don't know everything, so I didn't know if you could remember anything. But yeah, I thought he just never got the chance to. But like you said, there's a reason why he's second only to Jango Fett in the Star Wars universe, and you know, for at least Star Wars fans, probably one of, if not the best bounty hunters, uh, out there. Um, but yeah, like I mean, season two starts off with a banger because, you know, it's the story arc that is him, um, where he's trying to steal the holocrons. The first three episodes all deal with Cad Bane, and I don't know if that was because of the reception that the last episode got, or what it was, but I'm definitely not uh complaining about it because I like Cad Bane. I was a little disappointed when we only got to see a little bit of him in Bad Batch because they put him out there in the trailer and then we we basically saw all he was in the trailer. It
Mm,
was that short. Same for
yeah.
not really, but same for Saz Ventress. So they're a little bit misleading there, but I understand why they did it.
Mm,
But I always love seeing more Cad Bane. He's a great character.
yeah.
Fun to
Ventress
watch.
is,
Maybe not
Ventress is
great
also an
character.
interesting one, too, because she's probably another, like, really infamous bounty hunter, but you don't really think of her as a bounty hunter, you think of her as an assassin.
I was about to say, I think it's because she becomes that bounty hunter or takes on that bounty hunter title so much later
Yeah.
that there's more in the log in the brain of her fighting against the Jedi than she does,
Mm.
Like you see her more as a
But
dark side user than a
okay, but
bounty
at
hunter.
that time period where she is a bounty hunter, she probably like as far as like reputation and stuff goes, she probably climbs up to top 5 bounty hunters in the galaxy.
Yeah. Well, the thing
But
is too is like okay, so you look at it like she's a force user, right? So you
mm,
know she has a lightsaber, she has the force. That's stuff that most bounty hunters don't have. And you're like, well, why wasn't she number one? Well, it's like, okay, well, here's the reason Cad Bane's number one. It's because of his planning. He always
mm,
has a contingency plan, and we get to see that in this episode, and definitely a lot more down the road. We get to see that. You know, he's always one step ahead of you, which is
well, that's also
you know,
why.
always an annoying thing. Which is always an annoying thing in an enemy, but it's fun to
Mm,
watch.
well, that's why Boba Fett, even at this point, was like I don't even know during the Clone Wars. I don't even know if you could say Cad Bane or Boba Fett was more infamous because Boba Fett was like a teenager. But
Yeah,
think about the
he
fact
made a
of like
name for
what.
himself.
Think about the fact of why and why he had other bounty hunters working for him. He
Yeah,
did not
at such
have
a
the
young age.
physical. He did not have the physical ability to stand up against, toe to toe against some of these other bounty hunters. It was his planning and just okay.
He had Bosk
He's
working for him.
he
Bosk could have bit
spent
his head off if he wanted to.
yeah he spent several years uh you know doing stuff doing jobs with his dad. He learned from the best bounty hunter in the galaxy, so of course he was
Yeah,
gonna now
yeah.
I'd argue that probably Boba Fett became more infamous than Jango Fett ever did, both in the Star Wars universe and or both in universe and in the fan base. But
Hmm.
you know,
Yeah. Well, at least in the fan base, he was Jango Fett was kind of an afterthought. But
yeah.
you know,
Well, I'll say if you're talking about in the fan base, then Boba Fett and Cad Bane are definitely way more infamous than Jango.
yeah, yeah. That's definitely true. Hey, David, so I got a question for you. What is your favorite Star Wars quote? Better yet, what is your favorite Star Wars The Clone Wars opening quote? Did you get any wisdom reading them?
You know, I
Season
was
1,
gonna,
Episode 1. Great leaders inspire greatness in others.
I was going to pull that up, the list of them all. I didn't think of that beforehand, but
Well, I did.
there was one that
Season
stood out to
1,
me.
Episode 2. Belief is not a matter of choice, but of conviction. Season 1, Episode 3. Easy is the path to wisdom for those not blinded by ego. Who
That's a
came
good
up
one.
with these?
That's a good one.
All right. Episode 4. A plan is only as good as those who see it through.
It's another pretty good one.
Episode 5. The best confidence builder is experience. In my book, experience trumps rank. What was it that Rex said? Experience is the most important thing or whatever.
Hmm.
Yeah, he words it differently. I just don't remember exactly what he says.
Yeah.
Do these actually fit with the episode?
Some of the time I think they do. So let's see, episode 6 is trust in your friends, and they'll have reason to trust in you.
That is downfall of a droid. So that's when when
R2D2
uh
goes missing.
R2 gets missing. So let's see, maybe that can kind of fit.
Mm.
Episode 7, you hold onto friends by keeping your heart a little softer than your head. Well, now I'm
I
just
mean,
kind of confused.
well, you don't want a soft head. I mean, yeah.
That's true.
Although, at the same time, it might not be a good thing to have a hard head, because I think, as you and I can attest to that, we're both pretty hard headed.
It's gotten us somewhere. The hospital. Episode 8. Heroes are made by times. That is Bombad Jedi. No.
That's referring to Jar
Screw
Jar.
Jar
No.
Jar. Screw Jar Jar. All right. Episode 9. Ignore your instincts at your peril. I ain't gonna lie. What kind of kid? I don't even know what I mean when I say kid. Honestly, I don't know. But like, peril? Make a kid go look up in the dictionary.
So 10.
Make
Sounds like Yoda said this one. Most powerful is he who controls his own power. That's a Yoda quote.
I yeah. I also can see how that fits the episode because
Mm,
the young Jedi is a little power hungry and wants to defeat Grievous, and that kind of overcomes him.
I feel like
Episode
that one
11.
about
The wine.
I feel like
Say
that one
what?
about ego from earlier also fits.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. That one. Let's see. What was that one with? That was episode 3.
That would have been one of
I
the ones
guess
with the malevolence.
that would have been the last episode in the Malevolence arc. So maybe the ego deals with
Grievous, I don't know.
I don't know. Oh no, it wasn't the last one. There's one after that where they destroy the. I don't
It
remember.
still could have been.
Whatever.
It still could have been talking about Grievous.
Still could have been talking about Grievous. Let's see. Episode 11. The winding path to peace is always a worthy one, regardless of how many turns it takes. What did I say? 11. That's the first one with Dooku being captured.
Mm.
Interesting.
Episode 12.
Episode
Fail with honor rather than succeed by fraud.
so don't be a pirate. Episode 13. Greed and fear of loss are the roots that lead to the tree of evil. Uh, they mention a tree, and there's trees in that episode.
Episode 14. When surrounded by war, one must eventually choose a side.
That fits because they were trying to stay neutral
Mm.
in a galaxy gripped by war, and that wasn't going to happen.
Yeah.
Let's see, episode 15. Arrogance diminishes wisdom. What's 15? Oh, yes, there, that fits because the ambassador guy was a douche because he was arrogant and thought he was better.
Hmm. Episode 16. Truth enlightens the mind, but won't always bring happiness to your heart.
That's fair. They try to
Yeah.
find a traitor. They found the traitor, so it enlightens their minds, but they were sad about it because
It was their brother.
it was it was their brother.
Yeah.
All right, let's see. Sev 17. Fear is a disease. Hope is its only cure. Well, they're releasing the disease and they got to find a cure, so I guess that's what they're going for.
And it also sticks
In the
with the kind of, Star Wars theme of hope.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah. Episode 18. A single. Yeah, wait, up to 18? Yeah, 18. A single chance is a galaxy of hope.
That fits. That fits.
Yeah.
Um, let's see. 19, episode 19. It is a rough road that leads to the heights of greatness.
So this is the episode that I
Uh,
was talking about with Ahsoka. So,
yeah,
yeah. So
yeah,
it
because
fits.
that. I mean, the description even here says Anakin teaches Ahsoka a lesson, and
Hmm.
it's a rough road, but she comes out on top as because she gets through it. So yeah,
Yeah.
that fits.
Episode 20. Costs of war will Costs of war can never be truly accounted for.
Yes.
Again, talking about that's Innocence of Ryloth.
Hmm.
Again, like I said, there are darker undertones in this episode.
Yes. Yes. That definitely fits for the episode. All right, episode 21. Compromise is a virtue to be cultivated, not a weakness to be despised.
Hmm.
So I can see how that would kind of fit. That's the episode, again on Ryloth, but it's focusing more on Mace Windu and uh also a character that we see later on, uh, what's his name? Sandula, whatever. Um,
Mm,
so we get to see him later in Rebels, and
yeah,
yada yada yada. But I get that. I get where they're going with that.
yeah.
That fits.
Episode 22. A secret shared is a trust formed.
Hmm.
I don't know necessarily how well that fits.
Trying to think. Maybe, and this is just real nitpicky, but maybe it's when Padme shows Bail Organa her lightsaber, and so maybe she gets more trust than him. I don't know. They seem like they're pretty good together, anyways.
Or the fact that Anakin trusted Padme with his lightsaber. I don't know.
Yeah, but the only thing because I thought about that, but I don't know where the secret shared would come in.
That's
Um,
true. That's true.
so I don't know. Other than that, I mean, I think all the rest. I mean, I really do think that these all fit really well together because I mean, we didn't go over the first couple episodes with it, but episode 1, great leaders inspire greatness in others. That's what Yoda does with the clones in episode
Mm,
1. Episode 2, belief is not a matter of choice but of conviction. That's, you know, Plo Koon gets the clones to believe that they can be saved and they ended up being saved, but like, they never stop believing in that. Um, I do have a little bit of hard time remembering some of the other episodes here. Um, you know, obviously they have to figure out a way to blow up the malevolence. Good plan. A plan is only good to those who follow it through. Um, think in that episode there even was a Padme came out of hyperspace, yada yada yada, got trapped. So there were problems within
mm.
that, but they still saw the plan through. Um, and then kind of from there, I think we went over most of the other ones. Oh, rookies, we didn't go over that one, but the best confidence builder is experience. And those cadets went out of, we see in season 3,
Well,
episode
it's
1,
it's like
we see them get stationed on that. So they hadn't really had any experience.
well,
And,
it's
that
like at
gave them
at
plenty of experience.
it's like at the beginning. I think Rex calls them shinies, and then at the end
Mm-hmm.
he's like, "You're not shinies anymore."
Yeah. Yeah.
It's yeah, the thing, yeah, experience. Um, on all honestly, I actually like really liked season one more than I remember liking. I
Yeah.
mean,
I think that,
I don't I never really remember disliking it, but like I guess I forgot how good season one is.
well, I think the biggest thing is that later on, like, okay, so what is it? The biggest arc in this season is 3 episodes. I don't think there's an arc that's bigger than 3 episodes looking at
No.
this. Because Ryloth is 3 episodes and the Malevolence is 3 episodes. Later on, there are some pretty long story arcs in the series. So when you're thinking about seasons, you can think about the story arcs behind them. And there's certain story arcs that I and you like. And, when you're looking at that, you're like, okay, yeah, I like season so and so because it has these episodes. These aren't necessarily forgettable, but to the greater overarching of the Clone Wars, they're a little bit lackluster compared to some of the later stuff. But it was also season 1. For this being season 1, this is like really good. Like they were
Hmm.
figuring out what they were doing with this. They did
Yeah.
really good with it too.
So
Uh oh,
what
should I be concerned? I don't know. You started moving.
I was readjusting. So all in all,
Oh,
where would you rank season one out of 10?
uh, well, 1 second, because you're glowing. So I don't know if you're really happy or if you're an
Oh, here,
angel.
back a little bit
But
away from the
I wanted to
line.
mention that. I also know you're not an angel, so all right. Where would I rate season one? Oof, David. Here's the problem. I have nothing to compare it to right now. Okay. Let's see. Season one. I would probably give it like 6 or a 7 because it's good. It's above average for what like shows that I would watch. I would watch it again, but I probably wouldn't watch the whole thing. So maybe it needs to be closer to a 5 or a 6.
So
Maybe a
I,
6.
I
We'll
would
settle on 6.
I would probably say a 7, but there are episodes like Rookies that are a 9 or a 10.
Yes.
But then
The season as a whole,
there's also episodes like Combat Jedi that are 2 or a 1.
yeah. So for right now, I think I'm going to say that I rank season 1 as a 6, but I might change that after watching season 2
Mm,
or later. So I
okay.
think at the end of all this, I might rank the seasons differently. But for right now, after watching it, like you said, there's a bunch of episodes that are really, really good. Like Rookies, I liked, the Heist Crisis. Not the Heist Crisis, the Hostage Crisis.
Mm,
I liked a bunch of episodes in this season, but then there's also Bombad Jedi, and that at least brings it down like 50 points. So,
yeah.
you know, I think a 6 is good for right now. I'm not gonna disagree with your 7, um, because I think somewhere around that area is where I would put things. But 6 for me, I think for right now is good.
Yeah.
It's watchable. There's a bunch of really good, really watchable episodes in it, but it probably wouldn't be my first choice if I was just randomly picking Clone Wars.
Yeah.
Actually, it wasn't my first choice.
So
I just started rewatching it, so yeah, I'll watch it.
all in all, it's a solid season. Um, Sets up a amazing series. So yeah, go back
Hey,
and watch Clone Wars.
so David, let me talk to you about this. Okay, I'm sure for anyone who's interested in getting into Star Wars, I know my sisters in the past have talked about this. You and I don't have to deal with this because we grew up watching Clone Wars. But there is a lot to the Clone Wars that sometimes you're just watching and you're like, do I really need to watch this? We should either look up or make, as we watch through this, episodes that are kind of important
Mm.
for people who want to watch through the Clone Wars, but maybe don't want to have to watch everything, all together. Because, like, I would say,
That is an interesting point. I think we probably should look at that as we're watching through Clone Wars. Try to find episodes that, and
is there
maybe
any
once we're
episodes? Well, I was gonna say real quick, is there any episodes in this that if you're sitting here and you're like, hey, obviously, I would say any of the episodes that we talked about that, hey, we really thought just did a great job. Obviously, watch those because I think they'd be worth your time watching because they're entertaining. But would there be any episodes in this that we didn't mention, like that we specifically liked that you think would be important? Because I feel like most of this season is kind of detached from the greater Star Wars universe outside of it being the Clone Wars.
I feel like pretty much the ones that we said stood out are the ones that are, the more important episodes.
Hmm. Yeah, that's fair. Uh, if you like the Clone Wars and have watched it before, and you're not doing anything else right now, go watch it. It's great. If you're doing something else right now,
Go watch it.
oh
It's
well.
great.
Yeah, go watch it. It's great. You don't really have a life.
Yeah. Anyway, with that, do you have anything else you'd like to? Because we're about out of time limit here. So, do you have anything else you want to
No,
say?
no, I'm good. I'm tired of talking, so I'm good.
Same, same. So why don't you go ahead and head us on out to an outro?
All right, I'll head on out and out and then out and an outro. So,
You know, when I start stuttering, it's time to end.
yeah. Well, thank you for those of you who decided to stick all the way to the end and listen to this podcast. We hope you enjoyed. Comment down below what you think we can do better, differently, what you liked, what you didn't like, and leave a like on the episode. Subscribe to the channel if you're interested in seeing more content like this, and be sure to, as always, to join us next time on X-Wing Radio.
And remember, good soldiers follow orders.